والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Tonight, inshallah, we'll be having our program around Taqwa. And the way that we're going to structure this program, it's going to be a little bit different from last night. How we're doing it is that we have our wonderful brother, youth director, Muhammad Auda. He will be acting as the host for the program. As is our habit when we have conversations, he likes challenging and pushing, so I expect to experience a lot of that tonight, inshallah. Saying that, I hope it is a very productive conversation, and I hope it is one, inshallah, that is beneficial for all of us, and I look forward to it. This is the first time we're doing a setup like this. I have always had good chemistry with Oda, mashallah, so I look forward to the conversation.
Ameen.
But jazakumullah khair.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Greetings and welcome. This is going to be a nice, lively discussion, very interactive, full of a lot of, righteousness and ratchetness. Because when we're talking about people holistically and who we are, we consist of righteousness, hopefully, and we might have a little bit of ratchetness in us also. And we're a work in progress, working to acquire this thing we call Taqwa. So, to begin, the man needs no introductions, mashallah. Imam Farhan. Some of you might know him as Shaykh al-Islam, mashallah.
Allah yahdik. Allah yahdik.
Mashallah. One thing I do appreciate about Imam Farhan is that he always speaks where you're at. One thing that I really appreciate about him, that if you wanna go around Arabic words, he'll go around Arabic words. If you don't speak Arabic, he'll speak to you entirely in English. He's really good at being relative to people and relevant. And so, alhamdulillah, this is a pleasure. Appreciate you bringing me to do this, and it's going to be some fun. So we're going to start with the first question. The first question that we have is Taqwa. What is Taqwa? How do we understand it? How do we define Taqwa? And its relationship to this blessed month of Ramadan.
Jazakumullah khair. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam wa rasulullah. Taqwa is something that we had touched on yesterday, right? Yesterday, the conversation was more focused around sabr and patience and what that looks like and what that is. Today, the conversation is going to be solely around this idea, this concept of taqwa. Taqwa is commonly translated as God consciousness. And what's interesting is that if you actually look at the root word of taqwa, it comes from waqa. And that means it's like a shield, and it's something that protects you. What would you say that this taqwa is supposed to protect you from? So if I have this constant awareness or this God consciousness, what am I protecting myself from? What do you guys think?
Bad thoughts.
Okay, bad thoughts. Good. Yes, you were saying something? Protecting myself from sin. Good. What else? Forgetfulness. Okay. The shaitan. So a lot of these things that you're saying, these are unseen things, right? So I'm definitely protecting myself from things that are unseen. And if I'm trying to build that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm trying to defend myself from those, absolutely. Essentially what I'm trying to defend myself from is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wrath and His punishment. And the only way I can protect myself from that is by returning to Allah. Right? If I understand the source of reward and the source of punishment comes from Him, it becomes a lot easier for me to balance that when I return back to Him, because the one who can give that, He can also be the one that takes it away. And if I'm constantly seeking His pleasure, Azza wa Jal, it's a way for me to avoid His wrath. So, and taqwa is used in multiple concepts in multiple different ways. Or I would say multiple places in the Quran, I won't say different ways. The first that comes to mind for me is يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that, O people, I have created you from a man and a woman, and into ethnicities and tribes, so that you may recognize one another. The best of you in God's eyes is the one with the most taqwa. The second place that comes to mind is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's statement, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Fasting has been prescribed to you as it was prescribed to those before you, so that you may attain taqwa. And what's interesting in these two places in the Quran is you see a lot of, in the first verse that I shared, it was about, okay, well, I find taqwa in the differences between us. And the second place I find it is when I'm fasting. So I think that would be an interesting conversation on like, okay, well, why in those two places? Like, how come I find taqwa when I'm looking at the differences between people? And why do I find taqwa when I'm fasting?
Okay. Now, I feel like a lot of times when people are talking about taqwa, there are, Iman and yaqeen is also kind of lumped in there.
Yeah.
Before going into that, I want to know, like, how do you recognize, like, what are signs of someone who has taqwa? Like, what are things that, and how do you know within yourself if you're someone who has that God consciousness?
All of these are related concepts, right? So this idea, iman, how do we tend to translate iman?
Answer it, please, Iman.
Iman. This is how I translate iman.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
Faith is one translation for it. It's the six tenets. When we talk about the six tenets of faith, so we say the 6 pillars of iman. We also translate that to the 6 pillars of iman is Islam. I mean, you're not far. So belief is another translation for it. So I think both of these are very reasonable. When we talk about faith, we talk about belief. Yaqeen, this is probably another term that you guys have heard before. How do you guys translate that?
Conviction.
I'm going to show you mine. No, I'm sorry. Conviction, certainty, mashallah, those are excellent translations for that, right? So when we talk about yaqeen, we talk about conviction, we talk about certainty, and the third term we have is taqwa. And you start seeing how all of these elements are threaded together, right? This idea of God consciousness, this idea of certainty, and these ideas of belief. And all of them are located and contained in the heart, and how we deal with the unseen. Specifically on how I view and how I deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when it comes to taqwa, or when it comes to yaqeen, when it comes to iman, the beautiful thing about all these elements is that I can always increase them, right? And versus, for example, if I'm doing my 5 daily prayers, can I do more obligatory prayers? I want you guys to think about that. Can I do more obligatory prayers? No, right? Whatever's the obligation is all I can do. Can I do 2 hajj at once? No, I can't do that. Once I give zakat that one. All of those are they're limited actions. But when it comes to our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's actually unlimited. And it doesn't matter what level of yaqeen I am, or what I have, or what level of iman I have. That can always increase, and it can always draw us nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So, I'm wondering, because this is something that comes up where people talk about different struggles that they're experiencing in life, and I'm wondering, is there a connection that can be made between taqwa and the role that suffering or different challenges that we experience in life, how those can kind of work in a way to for cultivating taqwa? Like, what role does suffering that we experience in life play in us acquiring taqwa?
MashaAllah. That's actually an excellent question.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَقُولُوا آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us in this verse, is like, do you think that I will say I believe in Allah and I will not be tested? Right? It's subhanAllah. So here Allah Azza wa Jal, He directly connects iman with what? With struggle. It's not possible that it's not like I'm going to come to Islam and then Allah is going to make everything easy for me. And one of the biggest proofs for that is who had the biggest difficulties. So if we look at all of the narratives in the Quran, who had the biggest problems and who faced the biggest challenges? The prophets, like absolutely. And I'm not saying this to belittle them, alayhim salatu wasalam, in any way, shape, or form, but you want to talk about like dysfunctional families, right? Just imagine, my relationship with my father is so bad, he threw me into a fire pit.
Wait, bro. Habibi. This is a true story?
True story.
SubhanAllah.
Who's that? Which prophet am I talking about? Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. I love my son. And I'm telling him to get on the boat with me. And he's like, yo, Pops, I'm good. I'm okay. I'll be fine. Don't worry about me. And what happens? Ibrahim, like Nuh alayhi salam, actually sees his son perish. You're in a village. You're in a village where Allah has sent you with your wife and your daughters. And you're like, these people are going to perish. Angels are coming in. They have angels, like, subhanAllah, angels are having a conversation with you and your family. And your wife is like, nah, I'm good.
SubhanAllah.
Lut alayhi salam. Like, imagine the heartbreak and the heartache that they had to go through and that they had to face. And the thing with pressure, right? Like if you talk about pressure, if you talk about adversity, if you talk about pain, you talk about discomfort, when that is angled and it's pushed in the right way, it creates diamond characters, right? And these are the people who we see in the Anbiya. When we look at the prophets, when we look at the messengers, alayhim salam, these are the best people to ever have lived. And you cannot be an amazing person. You cannot be an outstanding individual if you don't understand what pain is, if you don't understand what difficulty is. Because if I never experience pain, if I never experience discomfort, if I never experience difficulty, what kind of person does that make me? So someone, we call those people like who are always born with like a silver spoon in their mouth, or trust fund babies. Like we use this terminology a lot. Why is that so negative? Why does it have such a negative connotation in our culture? Okay, and what am I losing by not knowing life struggles? How do I end up becoming? What is the term that we call that person? What? Now you possibly spoiled.
Are you about to say ban?
Huh?
Never mind.
Nah, we can't. That's a.
Edit that out.
Edit that one out.
Sorry about that.
We call that person. We call that person spoiled, or we call that person entitled. Right? Because when they reach a certain level and they ask for things, what happens? They expect to receive it. In a person who's faced difficulty, in a person who's faced challenges, what happens to their expectations? Are they high or are they low? They tend to be very low. Because their only trust is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I like that. You talked about the best of people, mashallah, the prophets. Now, I want to pivot in talking about someone or a thing that reminds me of something that was written by one of the poets of our age. I say poets because I'm speaking in code right now. Something about how could you be so heartless? It was 808 and Heartbreaks. I forget who wrote that, but let's talk about, if you got that reference, astaghfirullah, repent right now. Okay, astaghfirullah.
I need you to sit down and be humble right now, bro.
Be humble, sit down and be humble. Exactly. Khairul Lamar, mashallah. So the question is, what about Iblis, Shaitan, right? And I think it's really interesting. Like, does he have taqwa? Does he have yaqeen? Does he have iman? Not this one, but I'm talking about like iman.
So Iblis is actually a pinnacle of what we just talked about. Somebody who is entitled. How come he didn't bow to Adam? What stopped him?
He thought he was better.
He thought he was better. And in his mind and in his heart, if anybody should be bowed to, what is he thinking? It should have been me. I'm one of the gatekeepers of paradise. I'm a creation that was allowed to be amongst angels versus the other creation that existed. I was pious. I'm righteous. Why does this new kid on the block who just showed up get all of this attention and all of this love? I am deserving of that. But the interesting thing here is, okay, well, Iblis, he had access to Allah. He had access to the angels. He saw the unseen, right? These are all elements of belief, right? These are all elements of conviction. A person who can actually see angels, a person who can engage with that. What's going to happen to my iman? Like, what happens to you when you say, no, I'm sorry, okay. Like, what is going to happen to my iman when I interact with the unseen? My belief in the unseen, what happens to it? It's automatically going to go up. So what prevents me from following Allah's command? What would stop me at that point? What is Iblis' motivation? If he has all these elements, right? He sees the unseen. We strive to believe in the unseen, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're actually striving to believe in the unseen. Like, these are efforts that we make. We make an active effort to do that. Iblis, he didn't need to make that effort. So I'm saying, what stopped him? What prevented him from obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Ego.
Huh?
Ego.
Ego. Jazakallah khair. Look how vile the ego is. That it doesn't matter what I believe. It doesn't matter how high my standing is. That thing will still prevent me from listening to a clear command to Allah. And if Iblis really wanted to undermine this entire religion, what could he do?
Repent.
All he has to do is repent. That's it. And he's here listening right now. I'm giving him the formula.
Well, he's locked away right now.
He's locked away right now? Okay.
His minions.
His minions might hear me. SubhanAllah, think about that. He knows this. He knows this. But because of his spite, and because of his arrogance, because of his pride, that is the thing that's stopping him. And it just shows us how harmful and how damaging these elements are to the nafs and to our salvation. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from that. Ameen.
All the minions of Iblis, you know what I'm saying? Take the word back to him, inshallah. Now, 2 questions. I want you to answer it in whatever order you want to answer it. The first one, and I feel this is something that is a question that I hear a lot, and I feel it comes from a place of people losing hope, and when it comes to Allah, and despite in their minds doing everything that they feel is right. They're praying 5 times a day. They're giving charity. They're lowering their gaze 50% of the time. Like they're doing everything that they can. Okay, so the question.
The other 50%. They're trying to get married.
They're trying to get married. That might be another question with Taqwa. We've got to talk about that. Actual sister named Taqwa. But anyway, so how do we keep faith when we feel unheard by Allah? We make dua, we try, we wait, but nothing changes. How do we not lose hope? That's one of the questions. The other question, if taqwa is supposed to bring ease and blessings, why do people who try to live righteously often face more struggles than those who don't care about religion?
MashaAllah.
So just repeat the question in any order, whichever one you want to cover first. How do we keep, question 1, how do we keep faith when we feel unheard by Allah? We make dua, we try, we wait, but nothing changes. How do we not lose hope? And then the other question, if taqwa is supposed to bring ease and blessings, why do people who try to live right religiously often face more struggles than those who don't care about religion?
I think it's also important for us to understand that our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not a zero-sum game, right? Just because I pray, does it mean Allah is going to give me a good job? If I made Hajj, does that mean that Allah is going to give me a nice house? Right? That's not how the relationship works. The relationship is very one way in the sense that I need Allah and Allah doesn't need me. And once I understand that, it becomes a lot easier for me to kind of digest this idea that regardless of what I do and regardless of my worship, that can never translate into like a worldly benefit. There are some things, right? Like call on me and I'm going to answer immediately. There are other verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, right? Like whenever you're thankful, I'll only increase you, right? You have a lot of verses that are indicative of those things. The problem is sometimes we translate that into a worldly result, right? And this is where we tend to fail. Is that, okay, well, I'm looking for ease, how come I'm not getting it? But I think perspective is really important when it comes to these issues. That, okay, well, yeah, I can ask for wealth, and I can ask for a job, and I can ask for a car, and I can ask for all these worldly things. The number one question I would like to ask myself is, am I ready for it? What makes me deserving? Right, there's so many other things that Allah has blessed me with, and sometimes it's difficult for us to take stock of those things. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. Right, like if you try to count, and the term here, it's translated by many people in the plural sense, but the plural of ni'mah is ni'am, right? The plural of ni'mah is not how it's worded in the Quran. It's actually the singular form. So if you try to count a blessing of Allah, you won't be able to. Meaning that, can I actually enumerate the blessing of health? Or the blessing of eyesight? Or the blessing of the ability to hear? Okay, putting all those aside, things that don't have to do with like my physical body. The fact that I could come to a masjid where I'm safe, that has a program discussing issues that I have presented and say, hey, listen, I'd like to hear about this. We're not worried for our safety. I'm assuming everybody here is legal. No, I'm just kidding. But like, there's so many things that walillahi alhamd, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us in so many different ways. Right? He's blessed us in so many different ways, and having that perspective and taking stock of that is something that's really important. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe Allah didn't bless me in this way, but He definitely blessed me in these ways. And yeah, maybe Allah didn't give me that. Okay, well, maybe I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready to receive that. Because at the end of the day, whatever Allah has given me, I know for surety, 100%, I did not deserve it. I do not deserve it. And anything that I have, it's not because of the efforts that I've made. It's only because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to have His infinite mercy upon me. Right? He decided that, okay, you know what, this servant is deserving of my mercy, so I'm going to give it to him and I'm going to grant it to him. So how do I keep that faith? Well, what am I asking for? Like, what are the things that I'm really seeking? It's like, man, I keep asking, to marry this one sister, or I keep trying to get this car, or I really want this job. I'm being entitled with Allah. Like, think about that. I'm being entitled with Allah in the sense that, yeah, Allah, I'm asking you for this specific thing. Why aren't you giving it to me? Right? Think about that. It's a very entitled mindset. Just because I want something, it doesn't mean that it's good for me. Just because I want something, it means that I deserve it in that moment. Because the reality is, like I said, like we don't deserve anything. All the things we have, we should be 100% thankful for. So changing that mindset, changing that perspective, learning to be more thankful, taking stock of the things that we have versus the things that we don't. I think another element also is surrounding ourselves with good people, right? Like surrounding ourselves with like positive, constructive people. If I keep surrounding myself with people who are just, hyper consumers, right? And it's like buying things and going out and like, getting things and like, oh, you need to have the newest shoes and the newest phone. And how am I going to end up? I'm going to end up being like that too. Okay, but what if I'm around people who tell me things like, man, I didn't appreciate when you said this. Right? I didn't appreciate, like, hey man, like, why'd you say that to him? That wasn't cool, man. Like, those are the people I want to be around. Those are the people that are going to help me grow. And you know what? Those are the people that actually care about me. Versus the one who tells me like, oh, you haven't gotten the new phone yet? It's like, oh man, you still rocking that? Man, why are you still driving that car, man?
What you trying to say, bro?
Huh?
What you trying to say?
Yo, you told me you were getting a new car. You told me. You said, you're like, yo, I'm getting a new car. I was like, okay, I'm done. Allah bless you and increase you. Hater. I do hate your car. But these are the people we want to be around, right? Because those people are actually going to push us to grow. Those are the people that are going to push us to be better. Those are the people who we want to help us with our iman. These are the ones we want us to help us with our Islam. These are the ones we want us to help us with our yaqeen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us a suhbah salihah. May He azza wa jal give us righteous friends. Ameen.
Ameen. For those of you who are on the hunt, may Allah give you righteous spouses also as well.
Ameen. Ameen. I like how you made that plural.
Spouses. Okay, they're gonna delete this. Hopefully, it's part of it, yo. What you said actually reminded me of this. This is like a question that a lot of people have. You mentioned about having good companions, and so the question is, how do we deal with feeling like we don't fit in anywhere? Not in religious circles because we're not good enough, and not in secular spaces because we're still trying to hold on to faith.
Firstly, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you. You know, for those people that have trouble fitting in, have I explored every space possible? Right? I think that's something. It's like if I keep coming to the same masjid, right? If I keep coming to Al-Hijrah, it's like, oh man, I just don't feel like I fit in. Have you gone to Adams? Have you gone to Center DC? Have you gone to Quba? Have you gone to McLean? Like, and the beautiful thing in the Muslim community is, it's like it's very different from the Christian community in the sense that once they're part of a congregation, you know how many churches they go to?
None.
They don't even go to the one they're a part of. But I'm saying like, but that is the only congregation that they actually are a part of. That's the only one that they go to. I know people in this community. It's like, yeah, you know, I go to pray at Al-Hijrah. I attend the social programs at Adams, and I like some of the political discussions that they have over at Center DC. I think that's great. Like that's how we should actually parse things out. Because if I'm not going into spaces, like feeling uncomfortable is a part of the process. Number one, I can't just sit in my room and expect friends to come by and be like, hey, you want to be my friend? Right? Like that's not how that works. I have to make that effort. I have to go out. I have to make myself vulnerable. And why is that difficult? Because it is something that it strikes the ego, right? It hits the ego that, okay, how come people aren't friends with me? Again, my expectations. Am I acting entitled and being entitled? When I walk into those spaces, what efforts am I making to introduce myself? What efforts am I making maybe to take part in some of the activities that I might not be comfortable with, right? Like I'm not familiar with. At the least I have the obligation, as long as it's halal, to try. It's like, oh, you know, I don't like camping. Have you ever been camping? Oh man, I don't like playing board games. Have you played a board game? Right? You have to expose yourself to different situations, because even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He forces us to expose ourselves to different types of worship. Right? If you look at the types of worship, if you look at prayer, if you look at giving zakat, if you look at fasting, you look at hajj, all of these are very different types of worship, and we're forced to experience them because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically giving us a taste in a buffet. Like, okay, hey, listen, these are the minimum. This is what you have to choose. This is what you have to do. Now that you have the taste for everything, choose what you enjoy and start indulging in that so that you can become better. And it's the same thing in a worldly exposure. Like, okay, well, let me try this community. Let me see that. I'm not really vibing with that. Okay, try another community. And if I find in my journey that I've sat with 7 different communities and I rejected all of them, then I need to check my humility. Because it's not possible that I'm surrounded with 7 failed communities. It's just not possible. Unless I live in DC. No, I'm just kidding. But it's not, right? It's not realistic. And walillah alhamd, and it doesn't matter where we are. Like it's amazing, especially in the DMV, man. It's crazy.
Crazy. Yeah.
It is crazy. Like I've sat down, I've had conversations with Oda, like about DC and like what's going on there. It's a different world. Yeah. It's like a different world that is a 7-minute drive from here. Like it's a completely different world. It's crazy. And even within Northern Virginia, like the different pockets and the different communities, like I've walked into the masajid and I'm like, yo, am I back in Pakistan? Like what is happening? Like what is happening right now? It's like I was like, yo, where did they even find these decorations? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. It's crazy, like the differences that you find in these different spaces and how people create community, how people socialize with each other. I have to put myself in situations where I am uncomfortable because that is part of humility, and you never know what you'll find. So if I'm having a problem making friends, my suggestion, just be humble, right? Like we have to be humble, and we have to allow ourselves in the spaces to meet different peoples and different types of people.
So now, as we talk about, getting, connecting with Allah, you mentioned how Allah has prescribed this month. The verse in the Quran talks about why fasting has been prescribed to us. My wondering is, what is a cautionary tale for someone? Because what happens a lot of times is when someone believes that they're on the haqq, or someone believes that they have that connection with Allah. Sometimes, they make things harsh for people.
That's actually a fire question. No, that's good, mashallah. I like that.
So I'm trying to think, like, what's a cautionary tale for us as it relates to how we can kind of fall into, the trappings of shaitan by us thinking that we are holier than thou and so on and so forth, and how that can even turn people away from the tradition.
Absolutely.
So it's amazing how even through religion, the shaitan, he'll trick us in a way into thinking that I'm better than others. And it's so easy to sit on that pedestal, right? It's so easy to sit on that pedestal and to look down. It's like, oh, this person's like this, and that person's an innovator, and this person doesn't know anything about religion. Oh, what is your list of teachers? Okay, what is his silsila? And like you have all this posturing that happens in different communities, and this is not unique to any single community. I want to be very clear. This is something that happens universally. It's like, oh, who did he study with? Oh, like, oh, what is his silsila? Oh, what institute did he study at? It's like, oh, what mashayikh does he listen to? Everybody does this. Everybody. And I have to start thinking in that point, in that moment, what is it that makes me more right than the person in front of me? And I think that a person, when they've reached a point of arrogance, and I would say this in a very simple way, and it's something I try to remind myself a lot, when I stop asking questions, right? Like when I stop challenging and I stop pushing. Because the moment I think I have the answer, that means that I've reached, remember, you guys know the verse, like, it's Ya'budullah hatta ya'tiya al-yaqeen, right? To worship Allah until you reach yaqeen, right? Until you reach certainty. There are some people who believe they reach certainty.
Oh, subhanAllah.
Right? They believe they reach certainty. Can a person ever reach full certainty? No. There always has to be that gap, right? Because if there was a situation where we reached 100% certainty, well, where's the test? Like, where's the test? What is the point of even sending this earth? What if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just sent down like a team of angels and be like, hey, we're here. This is what we look like. This is who we are. What test is there? Why is it that Tawbah isn't accepted when the sun will rise from... I always forget the side one. Is it?
The west.
I know the Mashriq because that's easy. In Arabic, I don't remember. Which is from the west? Okay. I'll trust Oda on this one.
West Coast?
So the sun rising from the west, how come Tawbah isn't accepted at that moment, at that point? Because there's no test anymore. Right? The signs that were supposed to come, they've already come. And it's the same thing here. If I'm posturing in a religious sense, like, oh, I figured it out, I know it's right, well, who said that? And the only people who say that, you know that they're wrong because they start spending a lot more time criticizing others. And subhanAllah, what I find amazing about like the spiritual mirror, right? Like if we all have the spiritual mirror that we look into, that we're trying to cleanse ourselves. Like when I look into my spiritual mirror, and if I see a coward, I see somebody who's weak, I see somebody who's cheap, right? I see somebody who's unfriendly. That is tawfiq from Allah, because now I have the opportunity to clean the mirror and fix myself. And it's the same thing with the physical mirror. Like when we get up in the morning, what is it that I'm trying to do when I see in the mirror? I'm trying to remove blemishes, right? I'm trying to make myself presentable. And when it's cloudy, I can't do any of those things. And with the spiritual mirror, what happens is that instead of me looking at my inner self, I start looking at other people. So like the more clouded that mirror is, like with sin, with anger, with jealousy, with ego, I stop looking at myself and I start looking at other people. It's like, oh, he's a sinner and he doesn't understand this, and his mashayikh are wrong, and he's like this and he's like that, and you know she's like this and they listen to the wrong people, or he ascribes to the wrong silsila and they sit with him and he did tabdi'ah. And what kind of deen is that? What kind of deen is that? If I'm sitting and I'm looking down on others, I've already failed. Because if anything, if I'm practicing Islam in the way that it is meant to be practiced, it will never take me here. It'll always bring me down to the earth. Right? SubhanAllah, and one of the conclusions that I've come to in my own life is when people expect things from others, they just keep working in that expectation in that theoretical space, right? It's like, oh no, he was supposed to do this, and he's supposed to take care of this, and he's supposed to do that, and he did. Like everything is supposed to. The only thing that'll bring me down to earth is humility, because that will actually help me meet the person where they're at. Otherwise, I'm always going to try to meet people here, and you see this a lot, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from this. You see it a lot in divorces. Right? Where it's like the husband's like, she was supposed to do this, and she's supposed to do that. He was supposed to do this, and he's supposed to give me that, right? And you just see them fighting in here. But it's like, okay, like listen, he doesn't have money. She doesn't have support. Okay, what are you guys going to do? The only thing that brings people down is humility. That's the only thing. The only thing that will keep us grounded is being humble. Sit down.
Be humble. Bars.
I'm being like, humility is important, right? It's a fundamental part of our faith.
Khidr Lamar.
It's a fundamental part of our faith. We have to. Because it is the only thing, like I said, it is the only thing that is going to keep us grounded. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq and to keep us grounded. Ameen. Are we looking on time?
Looking good.
Yeah.
I wanna about 10 minutes. So I guess if it's okay with you all, if I can ask in your respective sections, because I know, we don't want y'all freely mixing up in this piece. Not on our watch.
It's okay. We'll charge.
We'll charge. Yes, I like that. Then it won't be free mixing, mashallah. So, we'd like for you to turn around to the people in your area, men and women respectively on your sides, and think about one or two takeaways that to discuss one or two takeaways that you're taking from what you heard today. And then in the remaining, we'll do that for, I'll say 3 minutes. 3 minutes. That'll take us to 10:50. And then at 10:50, you can talk out about what you discussed. So kind of sisters form a little huddle, talk to each other. Brothers, get to know each other, you know what I'm saying? Stop acting, give salam to the brothers right next to you. And talk for 3 minutes. What are some takeaways, some lessons, some comments you have regarding what you heard today?
And make a friend.
Make a friend, you know what I'm saying? Each one teach one. We have 3 minutes.